Today we're going to show you how to make your pads go from that to this and make it stop at the same time. Hey guys, welcome back to Will's Garage. Today I got a real easy one. We're just going to be doing rear brakes on a 2015 Scion XB. You know, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that little subscribe button somewhere down here, I don't know, and leave me a comment. I got it easier than most. As you can see, we're up on a lift, but you guys can do this easily on the ground with just a jack and some jack stands. Don't forget the jack stands. Jack stands are for safety. No one wants to get crushed by a car when doing something as simple as this. But, you know, the first step in doing rear brakes is remove the rear wheel. And as you can see, I've already done that. There's the wheels on the ground. Next, we're going to be removing the caliper, followed by the caliper bracket, or the pad bracket. I don't know which one you want to call it. I'm also going to be replacing the rotors. You know, a lot of these new cars, the pad starts off really small and it gets bigger as it wears. But the problem with that is you got an area on the rotor where it doesn't really contact for a lot of its life, and you get a rust buildup. And then the rust buildup, it inhibits the pad from making a good contact, and you just get, you know, poor braking performance. So just go ahead and change the rotors. The rotors for this car are about $53 each, so $100 for the pair. I mean, it's well worth the money. And you're starting off with a nice, fresh, you know, fresh slate. So you don't have to worry about noises or anything like that. The pads are going to seat into the new rotors. Everything's going to be happy. It's going to stop great. First thing, we're going to remove bolt up here, bolt down here for the caliper. And then, I don't know if you could see it. Let's see if I can point to it. This bolt here is what holds on the caliper bracket. There's a corresponding one down on the bottom. And that'll get both the caliper and the pad bracket off. Then we're going to remove the rotor. And then we're going to start cleaning up some stuff and start putting on some new parts. So hang on tight. We're going to get to the next step. Here we are. You can see the rear caliper is now off. I've got the pad bracket loose, so just got to pull the pads off. I should probably mention also on this style caliper, it's got the rear e-brake integrated in it. So there's actually a threaded rod that goes through here. When you go to turn or to compress the caliper, you actually have to spin this while applying pressure in. There's a couple of specialty tools and stuff. You can get a cheap universal one. Usually does a really great job. So this fancy tool here is to turn in the caliper. This particular caliper has the e-brake integrated, so you have to thread in the piston while applying pressure in. Now I've got this fancy tool, but they sell just a little square block that you can use and a regular ratchet, and you just kind of push in as you're turning it in. So I know I'm going to make it look a little easy, but you could do it just the same with regular tools. I need my wrench. Alright, so this is my brake caliper tool. As you can see, it's threaded this way. It's got the plate that goes in between the caliper. This is making contact with the piston. It comes with a couple of different shape. I'm going to call them dies, and they fit the keyways in the caliper. Some of them have 4, some of them have 2, some of them have just 1, you know. But like I said, there's a universal tool that's just a square that you put onto like a 3/8 ratchet, and you just rotate it as you're giving pressure in. A lot of the local auto parts stores, you can rent tools, and they usually have something like this in stock. So if you want to rent it, make your life a little easier, they'll have it. Alright, once it's in, All the while making sure that this boot is not getting all hung up or torn. And sometimes it gets caught with air. I just kind of give it a little yank and it falls back into place. So now we're going to just clean up the caliper. I'm going to clean up the pad bracket, and we're going to remove the rotor. I'll show you a nice quick trick to get these off. This one I can see has 2 threaded holes. That's for inserting bolts so you can pull it off the hub, because a lot of times they get rusted on. It's a funner way to do it. My trusty friend hammer. And it comes right off. Again, make sure you clean this surface too, because you want the rotor to sit nice and flush on this. So, little wire brush, just clean it up. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is the caliper bracket, or pad bracket. I don't know what anybody calls it, but that's what I'm calling it. I already removed the one clip. These are the spring clips, a couple of different cars use them nowadays. Usually it helps keep the pad off the rotor. And gives it a nice clean surface for the pads to move freely. So the pads I got came with new hardware, but after you pop these things off, you can see inside the bracket, let me show it a little closer as you can see, you get rust buildup. So clean that up before you put the new pad slides on. Otherwise your pad's going to bind when it gets in there, and the last thing you want to happen is for the pad to hang up, because what'll happen is it'll overheat, it'll hang up on the rotor, and besides making some real stinky smells, it's going to warp the rotor and your brakes are going to be garbage. You're going to have to do it all over again. So just grab a wire brush. That's a simple way. If you have access to a bench grinder or the wire wheel, it's worked really good, although sometimes it's a little tricky to get in there. But either way, just clean it up. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to put these in, just get all the big rust scale out of it. Oh, and another important tip. A lot of these brake pads now are carbon or ceramic. Is it ceramic? Metallic? But, you know, the older pads had asbestos in it. You don't really know what's in the pad material, so try not to breathe a lot of this dust in. So, I just wanted to point out here, the clips for the top and the bottom are different. So this is on the driver's side rear. The top one, as I can see, this is flat. This one has a little curved into it. Just make sure you put the same clip into the same place. You can see the new ones a little clearer when they're a little new. You know, the flat and the curve. So just make sure you put them back in the same positions as the old ones you took off. Okay. So when these rotors come new, they have some kind of an oil wax coating on it. Make sure you get a can of brake clean. Hose them down. Wipe them off. Get that oil film off. You want these new pads to seat in without any contamination. Really just need to get the brake surface. I'm going to throw the rotors on. Caliper bracket has our new hardware in. I usually don't put any kind of lubricant on here. I feel personally it doesn't need it. That way it keeps everything nice and clean. I'm going to put this guy back on. So the inboard pad on this car uses a little metal tab that makes noise when you get low on brake pads to let the driver know that you need to replace them. In this application, the squealer is on the inboard pad on the bottom of the pad. So make sure you install that in the right way. Now that the pads are on, our caliper is retracted. We're going to put it over the pads. We're going to put our bolts in. new pads, caliper cleaned up, bolts tightened down. That's pretty much it. You're just going to repeat the same procedure for the other side, but it's really just that simple. Nothing else goes on the rotor. You can put a little anti-seize on the lugs if you want. But I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to put the wheel on. I'm going to test drive it, make sure everything's good. And then the only other thing I would say to keep in mind is these new pads have to seat into these rotors, meaning the two machine surfaces have to mate. And it takes a couple miles before both of them are mated good. So your stopping performance is going to be a little less than it should. But just take some nice easy stops. Everything will seat in nice. And you'll have nice new rear brakes. So don't forget to like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you like this video, if you want to see more. And I'll see you next time.